Welcome back, Phil 301. Dr. K here. I hope you all are doing well. In our last video, we discussed the four main positions on the problem of the origin of the world. We saw that there were two main classes of position: theistic positions, on which God has some role in the world being the way that it is, and non-theistic positions in which God has no role in the world being the way that it is. Under theistic positions, we saw the Jewish position, the Platonic position, and the Aristotelian position. And the only non-theistic position was the Epicurean position. We also noted that Maimonides is a proponent of the Jewish position. The question then becomes, well, if there are these four positions on the table, why does Maimonides think the Jewish position is true? Right? How does he eliminate the other positions? We saw last time that he wants to eliminate the Epicurean position as being a non-starter because it doesn't involve God in any way. And Maimonides, we've looked at his argument for the existence of God. He takes the existence of God to definitely have been proven and for God to have some role in creation. So that leaves left over the Aristotelian position, Platonic position, and the Jewish position. In this video, what we're going to do is look at one of his main arguments against the Aristotelian position, what I'm going to call the argument from necessity. So let's first refresh ourselves on what the Aristotelian position on the problem of the origin of the world is. Okay, so remember, the problem of the origin of the world consists of two main questions. Does the world have a beginning? And if so, what exactly are the details with respect to how it began? The Aristotelian position holds that the world, including time, had no beginning. It has always existed pretty much the way that it is. Right? So there's always been an earth, there's always been a sun, a moon, there's always been trees, human beings have always existed, horses, butterflies, caterpillars, ants, mountains, rivers, and lakes, etc. have always existed. You just think of the world as we experience it and know it here on Earth has always existed in pretty much the same way. Yes, there's change, but the general form that the natural world takes has pretty much always existed as it is, right? And the way that it is depends upon God's will, which has always been and always will be what it is. So God has always existed. He has always willed the world into existence, and hence the world and time have always existed. There is no beginning because God doesn't have a beginning, and God has always willed the world and time into existence. Okay, so now, having refreshed ourselves on what the Aristotelian position holds, let's turn to discussing Maimonides' argument from necessity against the Aristotelian position. Okay, so Maimonides' argument from necessity against the Aristotelian position essentially is going to charge against the Aristotelian position that it limits what God is able to do. And for this reason, it can't be the correct position. So let's have a read through the claims in the argument. So premise one, if the Aristotelian position is true, then the world is necessary. That's to say, it must exist as it is and it can't be otherwise. Why? Because on the Aristotelian position, the world exists in the way that it does because God wills it into existence in that way, and God always has and always will it into existence in that way. Premise two, but if it's necessary, then God cannot change it. For example, as Maimonides himself writes, if he, that's to say God, wanted to do so much as lengthen the wing of a fly or shorten the leg of a caterpillar, he couldn't do it. Right? Because God's will always has been and always will be the same on the Aristotelian position. It can't change. Premise three, but Maimonides thinks that this is not compatible with the perfection of God. In other words, God could, say, lengthen the wing of a fly or shorten the leg of a caterpillar if he wanted to. Therefore, since the Aristotelian position is not compatible with the perfection of God, the Aristotelian position is false and it must be eliminated from the contending positions with respect to the problem of the origin of the world. Right, so there you have it. That's Maimonides' argument from necessity against the Aristotelian position on the problem of the origin of the world. So again, the idea is that on the Aristotelian position, the world must be the way that it is and it can't change. Because God's will must be what it is and it can't change. But Maimonides doesn't think this is compatible with perfection of God. God could change features of the things that exist. Right? So we have to reject the Aristotelian position because of that. Now I'm going to say a few things about Maimonides and the Aristotelian position. The first, as I mentioned a few videos back, is that in the guide, Maimonides considers half a dozen or so arguments for the Aristotelian position, and he rejects each one as failing to prove that position. Second, the argument from necessity is just one of the arguments that Maimonides wages against the Aristotelian position. There are others that he wages directly against it as well. We're choosing the argument from necessity because it seems to be his central objection by which he seeks to eliminate the Aristotelian position from the possible candidate positions regarding the problem of the origin of the world. Right, so Maimonides' discussion of the Aristotelian position is more wide-ranging in this. We just can't cover it all. But again, in the video in which I gave the overview on the problem of the origin of the world, I let you know, in case you were interested on your own, all the places where you could find the various discussions Maimonides has regarding the Aristotelian position. I also want to say about Maimonides and the Aristotelian position, some scholars think that Maimonides secretly held the Aristotelian position, but that he didn't want to make it public because he thought it was incompatible with Scripture. Okay, so look, Maimonides was Aristotelian in a lot of respects, so it's not too far out in right field to suggest maybe he was secretly a Aristotelian on the problem of the origin of the world. I don't know. I just have read that in the secondary literature and discussions on Maimonides, and I wanted to make you aware of it. For the purposes of our class, we're going to treat him as being what he explicitly seems to say he is, which namely is a proponent of the Jewish position, which holds that the world did have a beginning. In fact, God created it out of nothing. All right, so in this video, we looked at Maimonides' argument from necessity against the Aristotelian position. In the next video, we're going to look at his practical or speculative argument for the Jewish position. And we'll also see that it's a feature of this argument that at one and the same time, it's a direct argument for the Jewish position, but it's also an argument against the alternative positions. So I'll see you in the next video. Dr. K out.